Hi, teaching interculturality, a teaching interculturality, a teaching interculturality, a reinterpretation of knowledge and skills. In this chapter, Standard actually seeks to reinterpret the way, especially knowledge and the skills dimensions of the intercultural communicative competence. The author argues that interculturality is not simply about recognizing and respecting cultural differences, which is, of course, a very important aspect of interculturality, but also, and I think this is the original contribution of the author, is that wants to focus on the substeps, the subtextual meanings, the complexities of cultural communications that have under power relationships underneath the use of language. So the author looks to argue, as you can see, for a theoretical framework for teaching based on the first, cultural studies, critical intercultural communication, and critical media literacy. And I think it leads to the discussion of critical pedagogy as a way to foster reflection and foster critical thinking in the language classroom. Actually, the emphasis of critical pedagogy has to do with the challenging dominant power relationships and in order to promote social justice. Once the author goes in and focus on pedagogical, the critical pedagogy, presents a model of teaching interculturality, which you see here is compounded by 4 stages: awareness, analysis, action, evaluation. And after the whole thing, the author presents a conclusion trying to emphasize on the importance of critical self-awareness and reflexibility. So, but there are 3 things that the author explains that for me are very important in this framework, and it has to do with, especially in the field of cultural pedagogy and language education, that we need to keep to understand that there's aspects that are central in this theoretical framework for teaching interculturality that we need to address when we are trying to promote intercultural awareness, reflexibility, reflection in our classroom. Number 1, it has to do with intersectionality. And this is something really interesting. I mean, it has to do with all the social factors that affect the way meaning is constructed and power relations are established. So there you see we have race, gender, class, sexuality. On the other hand, it focuses on othering the other, I mean how we construct another to maintain power, and the subtextuality that has to do with the hidden meanings and assumptions that underlie cultural text. So in critical pedagogy, which I already focused, here are some important things that we can read, that in general it is a call for empowering, for understanding the power relationships and seek for social justice, which is something very interesting when we're talking about how how we can make our students aware of these 2 important aspects when interacting with others and using the language. And the author presents models of teaching interculturality. It has 4 stages. You can see here one that is awareness, yes, recognizing and acknowledging cultural differences. The other one is the analysis, which has to do with examining how you evaluate cultural text and practice, to understand the meanings that are underlying. The action stage, actually, that based on that awareness, you need to promote, what are the steps, the things that students have to do to really promote understanding dialogue. and obviously evaluation that has to do with reflection upon the process. Possible difficulties, I mean, that critiques not of the chapter, but actually of the possibilities. Implementing the language classroom is really hard. Number one, when we have diverse classroom settings, probably the lack of teaching materials and media resources in our context. It is necessary, I believe, to have an ongoing process of development, professional development to do this. If we can have resistance from our students and from other participants of the context, and it has to be aligned with the cultural objectives. In terms of my research, to finish, these are my research questions that you can read quickly. And I think there are two interesting things that are my take from the chapter for my study. Intersectionality, othering, and subsexuality is key, and I think in my study I need to identify how those social dimensions affect the way stakeholders understand internationalization. I hope to identify that by getting some information that will allow me to identify how those things might influence the way they see internationalization, because it has to do with power relationships, understanding the other, that they could see that somebody outside, and all social factors, and flexibility and critical self-awareness that has to do with how I can engage students, internal stakeholders, lecturers, and other actors to reflect upon the biases and everything that affects the way they understand internationalization. So thank you very much.